Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. And this is The Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to The Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. Lynn, I'm really excited about today's topic.
I feel like we say that every time, but
we are saying it every time. I can be excited every time. I love this topic.
Definitely. I love this topic too. So today we're going to talk a bit about and ask you some hard questions. Really, is your business, are you running a business or are you running a hobby? So is it a hobby or is it a business? And yeah, I definitely love this. Actually, a few months ago, I was at an in-person networking event with probably 40 women in the room. And I straight up stood up and part of my commercial was, are you running, answer me this, who's running a hobby versus who's running a business? And they were just like, huh? And then I did a bit of explanation and I had a few people come up to me afterwards and they're like, ooh, that one stung. That one stung pretty bad. Because people, I think that they have a business, but really it's like a side hustle or it's a hobby.
Yes, I absolutely. And I am not against hobby businesses.
Oh.
I have some. I have quite a few hobby businesses, things that I just kind of do on the side because it's fun. And if I break even, that's great. If I don't, I don't really care. I have many of those, but I don't include those in what I consider my businesses. Those aren't really businesses. Those are just fun things I do. I don't get tax write-offs for them. And I think a lot of people don't even think about the tax ramifications behind having a hobby and having a business. And I talk about this all the time with my clients because I think people assume that, because I have a business, I can write off everything I want to write off because I have a quote unquote business. But if it's not actually a business, the IRS can come after you and come after you hard. Now, obviously, this is just the United States. I don't have all the rules and regulations for every other country in the world. But for America, if you aren't proving that you are a business and a for-profit business, unless obviously if you're a charity that is filed in the government as a charity, that's different. But if you are pretending to be a for-profit business and the government catches you, you're going to get fined like you will not believe. They are strict on that. And before people say, no one's ever going to audit me. Okay. I've been audited like 3 times. And I know that that's what people are like, well, how is it possible? I think that's like a red flag. The government knows me. They know me. And it's not to say that I was fine. I didn't end up having to pay in any of those cases. I had very clean books. I showed them to the auditor. They went through everything and I came out on top in all those cases, but I have been audited. So they do check occasionally and you don't want to be unprepared when they come knocking.
Not at all.
And I think one of the things when I talk about business versus hobby, the main thing is this intended to be a for-profit business? And there are a lot of things that fall into that. Do you have business cards? Do you have a website? Do you have clients? Do you have
Wait,
records?
What was that last one?
Do you have clients?
Yeah,
actual people.
That helps have a business, people.
Yeah, it really does. Do you have records that show that you have the money? Do you have separate bank accounts? Do you have separate credit cards? All these things? Do you actually have your business licensed with the state? There are a lot of things that fall into that. And so it's if you're not really running your business as a business, you need to stop calling it that, in my opinion.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, is that again, neither one of us are against it. I've had plenty hobby and I would consider hobby businesses. So there is a slight difference between like a hobby where, we knit, which neither one of us do, crochet. That's a hobby. or a business or a hobby business where you might make a few to like sell at a farmer's market here or there, give to some friends to sell, or a business where you're putting in a structure, you're ordering things to be able to like mass produce or produce, even like custom produce, right? So taking it from a basic hobby to a hobby business where every once in a while you might sell a couple here or there, or might teach a class or whatever. You enjoy it, but it's not like you're not growing it. And then a business where exactly what Amanda said, it's for profit. So you are putting in the work. And it's funny because I find that people who think that they have a business, they're missing some key essential things. And really they're playing in a hobby. So you kind of went from, it's kind of a hobby business. And so people are trying to like skate things, and people in business are too, that have businesses. But yes, and definitely Uncle Scam is the worst in
Yes.
in all countries. I'm talking to some lawyers here, and they're like, "Oof, yeah, we gotta make some shifts that are all legal, but to be able to protect me a bit differently, because Uncle Sam is slightly different than the rest of the uncles across all the different countries." But with that, with the business side, like if you actually want a legitimate business, it is about, are you setting the structure to scale? Are you looking at things to be proactive? Are you, when people are constantly reactive and not having systems and not really putting things into place to be a long-term business, to me, they're looking at it as a hobby because they're not implementing the right things to help it be like an actual business. They're not necessarily, maybe their accounting isn't in order. Maybe they even have a department, but it's funny because I've seen companies that even have, 15, 20 employees, and it's being operated more as a hobby business, where it feels like even the owners have like one foot in, and it's just for fun. I'm not saying that you can't have fun and enjoy what you do, but it's just like, it's more, whatever happens. It's just really passive. And to me, that's a hobby. And we used to have this conversation all the time when I owned that franchise and I was CEO of the global company for the couple of years, because these people would buy these franchises and it would literally be only one person. I won't say it's impossible to be a business with just one person. I'm not going to go that far. However, that's like big red flag number one, that it's just you, because you can only grow so much, right? The other thing is they weren't putting the work in to build the business. They just loved their craft, right? But and I know we're kind of crossing over into the on versus in business, which will definitely be some topics that we talk about, but this overlaps with the hobby versus business. So they would be either solo or partners, and they just were very reactive in their way. They couldn't think outside of the immediate, which a lot of times would be, some of them would have scarcity mindset too, where everything has to stay within. They don't see the abundance of like growth and that scalability model. And it doesn't mean that, that you want to be a billionaire. In fact, somebody said this on a call the other day at a networking event that I was on, that was virtual out of the UK. And he's like, yeah, I'm not in it to make $1 billion. We're happy with the way that it is. And to me, he was in a hobby mindset, even if it had the accounting system, even if he has, which I hope so, because of the type of business he was, even if he has like some plans in place, like his mindset was like more of, it's a hobby.
I feel like there's a lot of people who think initially that they're starting a business, but then it's all those little things they do along the way, which point to it being a hobby. And I know I just had a call with someone 3 days ago, and she had a business, and it was clear to me that she was running it as a hobby, but she's like, this is my passion. I dropped everything. I've spent so much money on it. I'm like, the fact that you have spent money on it does not necessarily make it a business, because when it comes down to it, and I know I keep harping on the government, but they do expect you to turn a profit in 2 years, sometimes 5, depending on the industry and whatever. But they want to show that you should be showing that you're making more money. Even if you're spending money, you need to show that you're making more money. And she was doing a lot of the classic things that I think a lot of hobbyists do, like giving discounts to friends and family that are like below what wholesale is. Like you're losing money by giving friends and family discounts, or letting things slide. Like somebody goes past a policy and like, oh, well, I'll let this slide for this person. And, oh, I don't want to make them mad. And treating everybody like you're afraid to stand up for your business and for your livelihood. And they're treating it like it's just, like, yeah, you can do that on account. Like, yeah, sure. Bye. You can pay me next time. You can pay me next time. And just people would, this isn't 1820 where people have accounts at the local general store like this. It's not like that anymore. There's so many ways to pay that to me, it seems very much like a hobby. If you're allowing people to, with no relationship, no long-standing relationship, no credit card on file, to sort of pay on account, even though there's no credit card on file, and you're just kind of like, yeah, sure, they'll come back, they'll pay me. Will they? This is a complete stranger you just met one time. They're not family, or giving these like extravagant discounts and writing it off as like, oh, well, it's just customer service. And I want everybody to be my friend. I want everybody to like my business. And I'm like, okay, well, do you want everybody to be your friend, or do you want them to be your customers? What kind of system are you setting up? So I think a lot of times it comes from these best intentions, or like you said, from this mindset of, I don't need to make $1 million. This is just something that if I make a little extra money on the side so that I can bring a little bit more money in and we can go on that vacation. Like, it's just, I don't need to make a lot. I'm not trying to make $1 million, but it's still a business. So if you are trying to make it a business, you still have to set up those systems and set up that structure that proves to everybody that it is a business, not just the government.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We talked about obviously the money aspect, systems and structures. I think, and you kind of touched on this last time, but I'll use the word boundaries, setting up boundaries with how you play with not just the people that you know, but the people you don't know too, your vendors, etc. Really implementing things to help create sustainability and scalability, and possibly saleability. So like if you ever want to sell it, right, you might not be thinking of that now. It's also part of looking at the whole picture. And you kind of started to touch on this about doing it below market value. I'll never forget when I started to switch my mind with the security company, when we first started our security company, because that was like my first, like, I would say, solid business where we even had employees and different things like that. Before, I had businesses, but they were more like solopreneur businesses and hobby businesses, right? Where it was providing good income and I was doing the right things. However, it was usually just me. But I remember having a conversation with one of our vendors and my then husband at the time, but my ex, and they were talking about like the cost of doing business is not just the labor for the guy to go out there, the gas and the labor, and then the parts. It's also insurance. It's also overhead. It's also a percentage for this and a percentage for that and a percentage for this. And when you can look at like the full picture, and yes, it can be complicated. And once you have systems into place, like it becomes easier, or a great software behind the scenes, which, by the way, that's another thing about difference between a hobby and a business, is like have some kind of accounting and payment receiving, some kind of payment receiving, so people can pay you, like not just in cash. If you are a cash only business, you're either a drug dealer, so it's a hustle,
yes,
or it's a hobby. Like make it easy for people to pay you, which will be a whole other conversation. But that, I think, like that also is like, part of it as well. Like those systems and processes, which obviously would be like having an accountant or a bookkeeper or something like QuickBooks or something like that, that you're using. And then looking at the full scale of like what's the whole cost, and make sure that you are looking at the whole cost of doing business. Even client acquisition, when I ask people how much it costs for their client acquisition, or how long their client acquisition process is, you know how many times, well, either I get like a blank stare, like a deer in headlights, or I get this, oh, all my clients are referred. Which, please, like, yeah, maybe you're getting referrals and you put in work to do that. And hopefully you're doing things to be able to keep your reputation up. So there's still a client acquisition, like, time, and you have to account for that. And if you're not looking at things like client acquisition, client journey, and that includes after they purchase, like, and how to keep them repurchasing or referring, promoting more than just like your every once in a while shout out, which it kind of makes me sad. I know I'm rambling, but it makes me frustrated and sad that like you have these influencers and these people who say, oh, you're going to get like, $10,000 in the next 3 days if you sign up for this course or whatever. And that's, to me, that is not actually running a business. That is, yeah, you might get lucky. It is okay. As long as you're putting the foundations behind the scenes in the structure in it, then it can be sustainable. You maybe not 10,000 all the time right away, unless like you have the magic sauce, but the majority of the people, like, it's not. And it's just this like falsehood of influx because they don't have the behind the scenes to actually treat it as a business. And so then they also end up in feast and famine mode, right? And I mean, you get that anyway if you have a business, but it's even more so if you have a hobby and you're calling it a business, or have a business and running it like a hobby.
And I think a lot of people, and I swear this has shifted in the last, 5 years, or maybe even just like since COVID. But for whatever reason, it used to be that 6 figures was the number everybody wanted to reach. Like, when I hit 6 figures, I'm going to be happy. But now it's 7 figure, the 2 comma club. I have to hit 2 comma club, or if my business isn't successful. And every offer that I see is this free webinar to get $10,000 this month. You can get 6 figures in a month. Do this. And I'm not saying it doesn't work for some people, because obviously there are people that are the exception, but realistically speaking, you're not the exception, you're the rule. And you need systems in place. You need the structure. You need to have a business that's really a business, because anything else is just a get rich quick scheme, and it may or may not work. Like you said, you might have the secret sauce that makes it work, but mostly it's not going to work if you don't have proper systems in place to grow your business effectively. Because if you suddenly got an influx of customers that was going to get you $10,000 one month, would you be able to handle that? Not if your business isn't set up properly. I mean, all these little, I'm going to get you this many followers, you're going to get this thing. It's not sustainable, and it's not practical. And if you had this many leads coming in, you would have to turn people away, and it wouldn't work for you because you're not running your business like a business and thinking ahead. Longevity.
Absolutely.
It's important.
Absolutely. So and there's different videos and stuff on the online and different things like that around this, but I know we're coming to time soon. So what I would say is, like, really just get honest with yourself, look at, or have an outsider person come in and just ask you a bunch of questions, because it's not hard to make that switch back. Like, really, as soon as you recognize it, if you want to run it more as a business, like, you put things into place to make it run more as a business. But it just takes a moment in time where you just do a quick analysis and really ask yourself the hard questions. Is this a hobby? Is it a business? Am I serious about it? Because hobbies can actually provide the sole source of income for some households, and that's great. And what are things that you can put into place to make sure that you're not going to get in trouble with the IRS, right? So or whatever said organization, because it's not just in the US that you can get in trouble for a hobby business. Like, every country, or most countries, have their rules and regulations around it. So whatever talk to a lawyer or whatever. The other thing is like, where can I strengthen the foundation of the business side, not of my hobby side or the passion side, but the actual, like, the mechanics of running a business. Where are the gaps and what can I put into place? And then start implementing them step by step, because that is what's going to help you create more of a business. And I will tell you that typically, when you start treating your business as a business, it is more sustainable. Almost, I would say 99% of the time. There are those few exceptions where a hobby is actually more sustainable than others. And that is like environment, person, type of hobby, etc. But usually a business is going to be more sustainable. So that means you don't have to be in a certain like feast or famine mode, right? So it just kind of eases the flow. There's other stressors that come with it, because being an entrepreneur is not always, we were talking about this yesterday. Like there are days where you're like, oh, really? And especially if you are one who has employees, but you will see a shift in the income that you start to attract, the frequency of the income, the amount, your bottom line, the customer loyalty. When you, we didn't even touch on this. When you have a hobby or a hobby business, customers don't tend to be as loyal because, I mean, again, unless you're a drug dealer, then if you're on the same block, then they always come to the same block, but it's a whole other story. Not that I've ever been a drug dealer, people. I'm just saying, using that as
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, let me clarify that. That was not my hobby ever. But no, because they don't know like when you're going to be around. So when they find something that's a bit more stable, right? Even in like energy, they're going to be attracted to that typically. So it's just something to keep in mind.
All right. So for me, action steps when you're looking at your business or your hobby and trying to determine whether or not it's a business, here are some of my number ones that will kind of like when I'm consulting with someone and seeing if I'm going to take them on, like here are the number one things. And the first is, are you legally a business entity? I, for one, highly recommend that you, if you are serious about your business, actually take the time to register an LLC, because as a sole proprietor, there is no protection against all the crazies who will come out of the woodwork. I had a company I was trying to work with. I wanted to work with. I said, they weren't trying to work with me. I knew that they needed my help just being in there one time. And I noticed they didn't have me sign a waiver, and it was a children's place. And I was like, okay, well, maybe it's just the front desk person didn't realize that you should probably have a waiver for a children's activity. Come to find out, she's a sole proprietor, no contracts, no legal stuff, no waivers. She's just letting kids like run amok in an old warehouse. I'm like, okay, I can help you grow this business because the idea is solid, but you got to get all these ducks in a row because this is just a legal minefield waiting to happen. So action steps.
Not just grow, but protect it as well, because that's liability.
Huge liability. And if you do grow and you grow to some amazing $1 million company, but you're a sole proprietor, I'm telling you right now, people will try to find a reason to sue you. They will sue you just because they can sue you. This makes it sound like I'm a horrible business owner. I have been sued multiple times. And in every case, it was not my fault. They were completely crazy people suing me for crazy reasons that are almost comical. We can get into that one day about all the ways I got sued, but I won because I had solid backing, solid systems set up that were just undeniable and irrefutable. Anyway, so action step, make sure you're a legal entity first. Don't try to tell me you're a real business if you aren't legally registered with the government that you live in. Sorry. 2, get a separate business bank account. You must have a separate bank account. And a lot of them offer free ones, or like just have to keep $100 in them. There's all sorts of systems, but you need a separate checking account for your business, registered in your business's name, not your name. You should also go ahead and get a credit card. It doesn't even have to be a business credit card, but it should be a credit card that is specifically for your business. And I know like when you're applying for cards, there are business cards and there are regular cards. It doesn't have to necessarily be a business card, but it needs to be solely used for your business. Yes. So entity with the government, separate business account, separate business credit card, and you need to have some kind of tracking software or spreadsheet, something, because if you're not tracking your expenses, you're not tracking invoices, you're not tracking any of the money, how can you prove that you made it? Other than, I mean, if you're working in cash, like, show me the money. I want to come into your business and see where the money is going. And anybody in the government will also want to see that. And I'm not, like I said, I don't want to make it sound like the government is like breathing down your neck, and it's really important that you keep your ducks in a row on your money, because when it comes around for taxes, if you want to get all those tax write-offs as benefits of being a small business owner, you got to show where that money went and categorize it properly and fill out your Schedule C and make it look pretty. So there are lots of reasons. So those are my top ones. If you have those, we can continue from there and you can sort of self-evaluate, but those are the most important for me anyway.
100% agree. 100% agree. All right. Well, we are at time, and we promise that we are going to keep these podcasts short and simple and sweet. And join us for the next one, and make sure that you're sharing these podcasts with the people that you know that you feel would get a kick out of us and learn something new, because we're only just beginning. All right.
If you are getting information out of this podcast, please like us, subscribe, follow us, and leave a review anywhere that you are listening. We would appreciate your feedback in whatever way you can supply it. So my friends, let's get after it.
Get it done.